I gotta say that this game did surprise me in a very good way. The general gameplay loop keeps me interested, the character design is fun, to say the least, and the foundation of this game that this demo gives us shows the huge amount of potential it has. That being said, Stellar Blade is coming from a mobile game developer for Nike, Goddess of Victory, with the developer name being Shift Up, which is why this demo exceeded most of my expectations. This is their first AAA title that they have developed because the Korean gaming market is typically more focused on mobile games, so this is a pretty bold move for Shift Up to make. Stellar Blade was formerly known as Project Eve when it was first in development. Even from the first showcase under that code name, it looked very interesting and different. This game is set in a post-apocalyptic Earth where you are controlling the main protagonist, Eve, fighting against some kind of space demons called the Natiba. They are very grotesque and mutated looking insects or brainless brutes that you are trying to stop from taking over Earth. The demo itself doesn't dive much into the details of the backstory, which is fine since we will get that in the main game. With that being said, I can't really form a full opinion on the story or character development. However, gameplay, character progression, graphics, music, exploration, and the overarching theme are things that we will get into in this video. Let's start with gameplay on Stellar Blade. So it definitely took inspiration from Dark Souls, but it still remains a very unique type of gameplay, a unique type of combat. The combat is very, very fun. It's very fluid. The dodging is a little bit weird and a little bit clunky, but you know, once you get used to it, it does make a lot of sense why they made it the way they did. The only thing I don't like, and we'll get into this a little bit later with character progression, is the dodge skill is stupid. I've never liked the dodge skill in action RPGs. I think it takes away from the skill, per se, of dodging. If you have to get dodge mechanics on this actual skill tree to make dodging more viable and more relevant in the actual gameplay. I feel like that should be something that you should get from the very start of the game, because having to get those certain skills to make it more viable and to make it easier, it just, I don't know, it just doesn't sit well with me. But I can kind of bypass that feeling because of all the other things that combat and gameplay has to offer. The amount of skills you have, the attacks you are able to perform is actually very interesting and very fun, but it's not one of those hack and slash RPGs. It's definitely a very methodical and very precision based combat where if you take a swing, you better make sure you have the correct distance and the correct timing, because if you don't, it could definitely leave you vulnerable to enemies' attacks. Kind of like in Dark Souls, but it has a faster pacing to it. It's different enough to have its own identity, which is what I really, really love. I love the fact that they were able to take inspiration from Dark Souls, but also maintain something as unique as they did, because it doesn't feel exactly like a Dark Souls type game. It doesn't feel like a Souls-like, but you know they took inspiration from it. I mean, Dark Souls is one of those games where people are going to look to that for action RPGs all the time, and there's nothing wrong with that. And so I feel like they striked a pretty good balance between taking that inspiration and using their own mechanics to create something fairly new and fairly unique. So I definitely can appreciate that. Other than that, I mean, going on to the graphics are very impressive visually, aesthetically, and how it looks when you're moving around is very, very good. There are 3 options that you get to choose from. There is performance, balanced, or resolution. I personally chose performance. I always choose performance in games like this because I would rather have the frame rates and the smoothness of gameplay than a little bit better graphics. For this game in particular, I don't know the actual difference between balanced, resolution, and performance because I only chose performance. I did not look into balanced or resolution, but in my experience, the graphical fidelity is not worth the performance of a game. That being said, even though I chose performance, it still looked very, very, very impressive. Visually, graphically, and aesthetically pleasing. Like it's very, very impressive still. So the world looks very lush. It looks very filled. I really didn't see any bad graphical infidelity with the world and what it looks like. Everything, the buildings, the grass, the plants, the enemies, the characters themselves, your main character, Eve, all look very, very good. even on performance mode. And the amount of detail you see in the characters and in the world is bar none a very, very good visual experience. I wouldn't say it's groundbreaking or anything, but the fact that this is coming from a mobile game developer, if you think about it that way, the fact that they have never made a AAA title and what we're getting so far in this demo, it's very impressive. And to say the least, they did a really, really, really good job on this game so far. So I do have to say, graphically, this game looks absolutely fantastic. The exploration, I would say, is fun. There's definitely things to explore. There's other paths you can go off other than the main story. In the beginning of the demo, you do get to explore a little bit more of the world that they show you, but very quickly it definitely kind of funnels into a very linear experience as far as exploration goes. I would say this definitely helps the story pacing a little bit, because when you get something like a really empty open world, or an open world with a bunch of side stuff that doesn't really matter with the main story, you can kind of get distracted and forget where you are in the story and whatnot. But this strikes a pretty good balance between story pacing and exploration. And to, feed off of that comment, there are off the beaten paths or routes that you can take where you can actually get some extra stuff, or maybe there's a chest to open with a code, but it doesn't distract you so much that you forget what's happening in the story. That's what I mean by striking a pretty good balance between story pacing and exploration. But that being said, with the puzzling and the platforming, I think they really could improve on that. But this being a demo, we were only able to essentially explore 2 different areas here, from the beginning of the demo and in the second part of the demo in the fallen and ruined city. If they do strike a balance with exploration, I really hope that in the full game they're able to give us areas where we're able to explore more open world type areas, as well as the more linear areas, and give us both ends of that spectrum so that we can, have more of a balance with exploration. I don't know what that would do with the story pacing, but as far as this demo goes, I can't really speak much on the story other than the fact that, we just don't have enough of it to really form a full opinion. But going back to the puzzling and platforming, I think they made it way too easy. They did mark some areas where you needed to go with paint, some yellow paint. I don't necessarily like that, because it takes away the satisfaction of actually finding out where to go. And that's what I mean by linear. It can be very, very linear, because they do mark those areas where you can go. It's less of a mystery and more of, well, let's just find the yellow marking so that I can jump on that ledge or go on that ladder, or, put this piece here so that I can jump on top of it and get on the ladder and whatnot. On the other side of that coin, some areas do have those paint marks, but they're areas that don't necessarily progress the main story. They're actually extra areas you can go to get some, a few extra items here and there. Even though I don't like it, I think I'm going to be okay with it if that's the case. But if this happens throughout the whole entire game, depending on how long it is, it could definitely make the exploration a little bit stale. But then going back to gameplay and the boss fights, we could probably bypass the exploration a little bit, because trying to learn the patterns of enemies and boss fights and whatnot is going to take up a lot of your time, because there are going to be times where you're dying and you're going to have to learn the attack patterns of bosses and whatnot. But moving on to character progression here, I would say character progression is very simple, but it's effective. It works. It's not something that's like super innovative or super different. With this character progression system that they have, it's not overcomplicated. It's easy to understand, which is a good thing. It's a skill point system, which means as you get basic skills, they cost less points, but the further you go down or into a skill tree for a specific skill set, the more those skills are going to cost. So in order to access these skill trees and these skill points to be able to spend them, you do have to stop at what are called camps. They essentially act as bonfires do in Dark Souls. When you stop and rest there, you are able to access your skill trees, your skill points. You're able to buy items related to utility and also health. You're able to upgrade your weapon and its power and your suit as well. They didn't have this in the demo, but at some point in the game, you'll probably be able to switch out your suit and get new suits and then upgrade your suits and whatnot. It did say that at one of the camps that I stopped at, but it didn't actually have the the option to do that. So I'm guessing in the full game, at that particular camp or another camp, you will be able to upgrade the current suit you have, but also switch the suit. I don't know if switching the suit is going to have any real effects other than cosmetic effects on you, but we'll have to wait and see when the full game releases. Character progression is definitely there. It's not something that's going to be hard to understand or even hard to get. I feel like it's a game where you're going to be able to progress your character to the point where you are able to get all of the skills that are available and all the upgrades that are available. And then moving on to the music. For a post-apocalyptic world, it's more of an anime type music vibe, and usually there's some sad music going on in most post-apocalyptic RPGs, although I mean there's Fallout too. So Fallout doesn't really have sad music per se, but it has that 50s 60s style like jazzy music and whatnot. In this one, it's more of a futuristic type music and an anime type music. It really gives the game an anime type feel to it, which is fine. I adore animes. I love animes, and I just think that with this choice, it's not going to be for everyone. The vibe's not going to be for everyone. I think the music's fantastic. I think the theme is very, very good. It definitely draws inspiration from Nier Automata, if you couldn't tell already, in a post-apocalyptic world. I think it works really, really well together. Overall, I think if you're a fan of Dark Souls, Nier Automata, or Bayonetta, or all three, you should definitely give this game a try, because this game is kind of a package of all three, has elements from all three games. I would say more heavily inspired towards Nier Automata, and then Bayonetta being second, and then Dark Souls being third on that list of inspirations. I appreciate y'all for being here. Thanks for watching, and happy gaming. I'll see you on the next one.